Okay, I had a question for each of you.
This is Auto Collabs.
You have to answer the question. You walk into a car show, what's the first thing you go see? Kyle.
The food stand?
No, you don't. Michael.
I was going to say, I'm finding the mini donuts.
Okay,
Is
well,
that terrible of us?
I mean,
We're not car guys. We're like
No.
car guys by default, you know, by association or whatever.
oh, we're going to be
I
at
don't
the well, we go to car shows. Come on. We go
That's
to car
true.
shows. You know
That's
what I
true.
like to go see? I'm going to tell you what I like to go see. I like to go see the big like the mountain displays where the Jeeps drive over the mountain thing.
Yeah, cool. The demo stuff. Yeah, that's where I would go. Wherever I can do a demo, you know?
Exactly. The demo stuff. The EV test tracks were really cool. They need like an EV test track drag strip is what they need, not to like drive it in a circle.
Yeah,
they
just
need to like
hit go and feel
which
it.
is really hard to navigate when you're inside a convention center. I can understand why they don't want like
That's
a 6,000 pound thing. You could do a professional driver.
I mean, the last auto show, I was at the Toronto International Auto Show, and it was there confirmed once and for all, no contest, that we all turn into our parents. Why? Because at every display, I turned into the Italian car shopper, like dad. You know, I'm like, open the door, close it. Oh, I like and I caught
feels nice. It's got a
heavy.
heavy. It's got a heavy,
I'm like
heavy feel to
the
it.
window frames. I'm like, and then I was like, what am I doing? They're gonna think I want to buy this thing.
He was in a trance, right?
Farm guy or the whatever farmer's insurance guy comes out, you know. He's
Oh
like,
yeah, the parent
happened?
coach, like how to not be your parent. No,
I'm
we're not
making all the
touching.
facial. I'm like,
Yeah, we're not commenting on how heavy the door is. We're not
Well,
commenting.
today we are hanging out with a new friend of ours, Jennifer Morand. She is responsible for aggregating a group of dealer associations and people that throw these auto shows and thinking about how to make the experience one that more people, more OEMs, more dealers want to be a part of. And we're excited to kind of like get into her brain, get into the mentality of what it takes to do that, to make sure that Michael and I just don't go to the food stand. So we hope you enjoy this conversation with Jennifer Morand.
All right, so we love when there's a new friend on a podcast because we don't know everything about you. We don't even know a ton about you. So why don't we just let you just give us the 30 to 60 second summary of what you do and why you're so passionate about it?
No, absolutely. Well, thanks for letting me have the floor to do that. Well, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm the incoming chairwoman of the Automotive Experience Alliance, which is an association that is driving innovation in the industry. Auto shows are a very powerful platform to introduce the latest products to consumers. And we always say, you know, they're actually paying to come to the show and to see the latest vehicles. So what a great opportunity for manufacturers to be present. We're very passionate about what we do. The AEA is founded on two basic core principles. Transparency is number one, and also benchmark data. So we run surveys. They're the same question set across 28 different markets, for example, so manufacturers can really evaluate the ROI from what they receive from auto shows. So we're heading into our second year. We just concluded our inaugural year and first time at a conference out in Montreal a couple weeks ago. So we have momentum and we're excited as we head into this next year.
What got you interested in this level of like experiential understanding for auto shows? Where has that like passion come from?
Yeah, so, you know, auto shows, they truly serve as such a dynamic platform to introduce latest products to consumers. And I run a show in Chicago, the Chicago Auto Show, and really it's a like-minded organization of show producers really coming together to drive innovation for the industry. And, you know, we see it and live it, breathe it every day. We're on our show floors. We see the consumers there. They're touching, they're sitting, they're test driving, you know, and ride-alongs as well. And they're experiencing these vehicles. And that truly translates to influence when they're considering purchasing vehicles. And what's happened in the past, 5 or to 10 years even, is manufacturer support is starting to has dwindled really from auto shows. They're investing in different platforms. Maybe they're looking to do car unveilings on YouTube, for example. It's different than at an auto show. But truly where the rubber meets the road is at the shows. Like I said, we breathe it. We see it every single day when we're producing our show. And it's amazing to see that, when the data is coming back to us. So it's not just what we believe and observe on the show floor, but when we're actually running these studies, we heard from 20,000 different consumers across the country, across all of those 28 markets. And it's nice to be able to have that validation when the data is coming back in support of auto shows.
A big part of our audience is auto dealers. So they're on the front lines every day. They would love it if someone paid them to come look at the cars.
Right.
Wouldn't that be amazing? But we really, you've crafted an experience, right, where people are paying to come look at cars, have experience, learn a lot, and have some fun. What, from a dealer involvement, angle, have you seen that increase, decrease, and what would you say to the dealers out there who maybe like don't want to dedicate resources to a car show because maybe they don't see value in it? I think that's a big part of how we can kind of solve this customer experience challenge, because I know I asked you a question, now I'm going to talk, but we're just such big proponents of delivering and bridging the gap between what the customers are thinking and where they're at in their life and interaction with the dealership, and showing the dealers and the dealership team as an advocate for them, as someone who they're real people. And we feel like car shows are an amazing way to do that, where you aggregate the people. So back to the question is, what would you say, or what do you see as far as dealer involvement in shows?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we both share a passion for the car business, but also for car dealers. I work for car dealers. I run an association of 400 new car dealers, and my counterparts at the AEA all run car dealer associations as well. So I think that is important to note. It is a group of individuals who work for car dealers. So the ultimate goal, right, is to sell the vehicles. So, we produce auto shows to be able to do that and to serve our dealers. But anecdotally, the dealers want the show to happen because they know it's going to drive customers to their showrooms. So of course, we're all advocating for that tier one support from the OEM level. However, there are local marketing associations that have stepped in, LMAs step in. Also, in many cases, in some smaller markets, the dealers are the ones who are actually producing the event in terms of providing the vehicles, and the shows helping with signage, that type of thing. So, across the AEA shows, we really do see a range of participation from tier one, tier two to tier three support. And, I have a great story. Mazda has been out of auto shows, and they're trying different experiential, tactics to get their products in front of consumers, and in recent years. And so finally, our one of our largest dealers here in Chicago, the Napleton Auto Group, they said, we have to be in the Chicago Auto Show. People that come to the show think that Mazda is going out of business. And I hear that from so many other markets.
Wow.
It's the same thing with, other shows that are missing the luxury brands. A lot of the German automakers have pulled out of auto shows, and, but
let's stay with Mazda just for a second, if we could, right before we blow past that, because Mazda is a brand. Kyle worked at a Mazda store for a long time. We work with a lot of Mazda dealers, and Mazda is a brand that is on the biggest upswing it's ever seen in its history. The product is amazing.
Yes.
They've crafted, so intentional about their experience and their marketing and what the store experience is. It's really surprising that they're not involved in the shows. And your friends at Napleton, for them to say that consumers think it's going out of business, it couldn't be further from the truth.
That's wild.
100%. Yeah, it's just the perception that when a brand's missing from the auto show, people wonder what's happening to it. Is it not around anymore? We heard the same thing with Buick. When Buick pulled out of some auto shows across the country. So, it's unfortunate because those manufacturers kind of stand to lose, especially when it comes to customer shopping. But the dealers know firsthand that auto shows move the needle because, in markets like mine and others across the country, there's an uptick once the show's happening, as well as after the show, that there's more consumers that are being driven to the dealerships. And the AEA is working on trying to figure out how to quantify that. It's not as easy as one would think. And we always say that's the holy grail in terms of the metrics and the ROI that we're trying to prove. So we're trying to dig into that. That'll be in our next year in our phase 2.
Well, and when I think about this, what we've been tracking over the last 3 to 4 years, ever since kind of COVID began waning, is there is an intentional focus for retail, for any industry, in providing great experience in person, because people are craving that. They're craving those touch points, even though digital is blowing up, but people are headed back to malls. People are headed back to showrooms. People are headed back to retail, because they're understanding that experience, that touch feel is so visceral. It's so important to our like human reality. And so I think there is something to that auto show, you know, and figuring out what's the experience that people want. Because I mean, we had one of our video editors was just at a massive video conference, video and social conference, VidCon, and like it's all Gen Z, right? And so it's not like these people don't go
The places.
to shows
Right.
to find more about the thing that they're most interested in. It's not like this is like an old, you know, oh, auto shows are for older people that have been going forever.
Experiential is in. It's super in vogue, right? They're like we're not trying to go cross-cultural.
Right.
And like or countercultural. We're not trying to get them to do something that they don't already do or enjoy doing or like doing. We might just have a branding issue, right? Like I don't know what it is. Like
And that's exactly what the AEA is trying to overcome, is that branding issue, that the auto shows are, you know, have been around forever, but there's probably a good reason for that, right? Because they do move the needle and they are relevant and people want that experience. And I can share too, you know, we're seeing across the board just more experiential type of activations taking place at auto shows. So the ride and drives are becoming huge and continuing to become huge, because we know when people get behind the wheel, they're more likely to purchase that vehicle. Education is big, especially with electrification. You know, we developed our own brand of, we call it Chicago Drives Electric, and in Chicago many shows are doing their own EV tracks, and so you know it's a way to educate the consumers, to get them behind the wheel and experience those vehicles. But also, you know, it's interesting, you said kind of what was old is new again, and this new, you know, crop of you know, the Gen Zs, but we have to give them a reason to come. And so something that AEA is passionate about is trying to provide different experiences. So it's not just, okay, the show's in town, come on out, but maybe looking at different experiences within the auto show. For example, maybe it's a craft beer sampling event one evening or whatever it may be, but to give people a reason to come to the show that might not already consider coming to the show. I know, you know, for example, we also do a run. It's called miles per hour, and it's how many miles you can run inside our auto show. And so we are able to tap into this fabulous
That's
running
awesome.
community. So you have to find ways to bring people together. And if they don't consider or self-identify as car people, you know, they're not car enthusiasts, maybe they're not in the market, why would I go to the auto show? Well, if you can provide that unique experience for them and give them a reason to come, you know, we're confident once they do, they'll come back.
You know, that's when people say they're not in the market, a lot of the time that's just because they don't have a compelling reason to be in the market.
Yes.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
And we once had a conversation with Ernie Garcia, the CEO of Carvana,
Yeah.
and his whole thesis behind making the car buying experience what it is, saying like, you realize, especially, I mean, we're talking about new cars here, but like people trade in used cars and buy new cars. But he was saying if we make it easier and more fun and more engaging to buy a car, we can actually speed up the timeline by which
Absolutely.
people buy a car. And I think a car show is a great, like someone comes in because there's a concert or there's food or there's a run and we get them in, all of a sudden, you know, like Kyle just traded in his Sienna to get a new Sienna, right? Because it has a
Vacuum.
vacuum.
Love that,
Right?
of course.
And
Yes.
and that's something that you see when you're at a, right? You see someone demo in the vacuum and you're like, you mean all those Cheerios could be gone? Like without me
And all of a
having
sudden you're in the market again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so I like the idea of courting all of these kind of subcultures that the market has already told us are effective. People like to gather around sports. They like to gather around food. They like to gather around entertainment.
Absolutely.
And even though they're not car people, like they're all driving cars.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They are car people. Kyle and I aren't even car people.
Everybody names their first car.
But that,
Everybody's a car person. Are you kidding me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned those other touch points. Like what's your take on overlanding? I mean, overlanding has become such a huge
it sure has been a
subculture,
trend.
right? And so we
Yeah.
built our own overlanding area, and other shows are doing the same thing to be able to appeal to that subculture of folks. And we heard it, you know, firsthand, that they saw it on the news or they saw it on social media, and they're like, "Wow, we didn't realize that was at the show." So it's again finding those different areas and those pockets, right, of interest that drive people out to shows.
What do you think's holding back more dealers from being more heavily involved in car shows? Like now, and no, granted, maybe there's not a big resistance to it, but from your perspective, like what is the biggest pushback that you hear? Why they don't send more people, spend more money on being involved in the shows? Because even though there's like OEM money, like a lot of these dealers, have pretty substantial marketing budgets
Right.
that they could invest more in an activation.
Yeah,
But maybe
or like the Napleton Group. I mean, they're a great example, right? Have probably, you know, a ton of the manufacturers that are already going to be there, right? They could like almost take over the show.
They could,
right?
They could hire an influencer. They could do an activation to highlight their group. What do you think are the biggest, you know, perceptions or mindsets that are keeping dealers from investing more of their already existing marketing budget into a show?
So interesting.
Yeah, I do have a perspective on that. I believe that, you know, there's this push and pull, this tug of war, if you will, between the retailers and their manufacturers. And, you know, the hope is that the manufacturers see the value in auto shows and that they're going to foot the bill. You know, it's always that push and pull. And this happens, it's not just auto shows, it's for everything, about the back and forth about who's paying for what. So I think that in many markets, if we can hold on to the tier one support, that's preferred. Of course, you know, dealers would rather the manufacturers spend the money and really market their products. And, you know, the retailer's job is to sell them the vehicles. But, you know, at that high level, you know, the hope is that the manufacturers would see enough value in auto shows, and that they really move the needle to be able to invest in them and to send their displays, their properties. And believe it or not, in some cases, manufacturers will not let the dealer participate because of the perception that if say, for example, you're
unfair
going to
advantage
from Ford, right? You're a global auto show, you're identified, you get all of their bells and whistles, you get the test track, you get the beautiful displays, you know, the different levels, you know, the finishes that they put in their exhibits. And then you have, say, a Mazda dealer that sets up right next to them with like one car and like a backdrop, right? And so it's like, wait, what, you know, and when the consumer's at the show, you know, you're kind of looking, okay, where do I spend my time? Where do I spend my focus? And, you know, Ford looks bigger and more interesting, so I'm going to head there. And so in most cases, a lot of cases rather, OEMs do not let the dealers participate. They literally force them to sit out because of the perception that it would provide, despite the fact that they wouldn't participate.
So one thing that I'm thinking about as you say that, are dealers not allowed to be involved at all other than the actual, you know, OEM display? Because thinking like the Napleton Auto Group could open like a barbecue stand as an activation and use that as a connection point person to person, even though they don't have any cars there. Is that something they would be able to do? Or does the OEM say like, you can't be involved in any way?
You know, that's a great question. I don't think it's ever come up. But I will say that maybe because it's a different type of activation, it would be okay to sponsor something like that. But that said, I'm not sure that the dealer would see much value in not having the product there or not getting the people into the vehicles. I think that, you know, if they're going to invest in the auto show, it would really be to showcase their product. So it's a great question. I don't think it's come up in the past. But, you know, I do think that, you know, it is unfortunate, especially in some of the smaller markets where they don't have the tier one support that some markets do have, that the manufacturer would force the dealers out. You know, it just seems, and I don't know how that comes together, what that conversation looks like. I'm not involved directly within that, but I just find that to be a very interesting.
You tell them to come to us. We'll help them figure it out.
We'll talk them through it, all right?
The reality is like tier one at its best, right? Like they do a lot of national advertising to bring awareness to the brand overall. But just by the nature of it, tier one is reaching down into tier three world when it's literally holding an activation in your backyard.
Right.
Like if there was ever a point where it was like, let's connect these dots, because like people buy from people they like. They might see a product they like, but they might meet someone they really like who can be like, actually, I don't know that you need the Ford. You can get a lot more value from this Mazda. And if you build the trust, right? Like you can take, like tier three can take a product out of tier one's hands if they were a Ford person and now they're going to be a whatever Chevy person or interesting. Well, that's an interesting 100%. Dynamic.
Yeah.
Because that's tier one, literally in your backyard.
Yeah. That's such an interesting, like total. Yeah. And I think, you know, for larger shows like a Chicago or a DC or an LA or something like that or Detroit, you know, it's a bit different than maybe some of the smaller shows. Like I think of the Nashville show, right? Where I'm from, it's a bit smaller of a show. You know, some manufacturers show up like decently sized, but there's no one like really blowing it out of the water, like with huge sets or anything like that. But it's a real opportunity for potentially that pairing of the dealer and the OEM to drive a bit more market awareness on something like that in a market that maybe isn't too nut for an auto show because it's not, carrying the weight of a major metro.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and I believe too, and what was unfortunate is back in the heyday, when auto shows were huge and it had everyone's attention, really was the media side. So what manufacturers would do is they would produce these elaborate press debuts, and they'd spend
Right.
millions of dollars for not even an hour, 20 minutes, right? And so that, to me, that's ludicrous. And some shows expected that. And you mentioned Detroit, and Detroit had a huge media preview. I think many people remember visiting that show. But unfortunately, what happened was the perception that auto shows are expensive, and manufacturers are trying to figure out where to spend their money, for the biggest bang for their buck, and they're just looking at their budgets, and it was costing them so much money to do these press debuts at the auto show. So of course it's a lot cheaper to do it on digital, and then of course came COVID and all of that, and so that just exponentially just set that on a totally different track. So I think though that really, I hope manufacturers understand is like, you don't need to do that. If you're going to be at the shows, you do have the ability to influence the people who are there to get into your product. And that's really the opportunity. It's not really around, it's kind of two separate things. Of course, we do pitch media, all the shows do, on the manufacturers and dealers' behalf. And, you're going to get that media coverage, and then of course the digital combination as well. But you just kind of have to compartmentalize it a little bit differently.
Yep. Yeah. Really thinking activations. I love that thought thread. I think that activation and experience are not dead. So I love what you're doing, and bringing together organizations to solve a common problem is really cool. Jennifer, it's been really fun talking to you. It's got our wheels turning. We're going to have some conversations, and I'm sure us in the future as well, but kudos to what you're building, and thanks for joining us here on the show.
Thanks so much. Really enjoyed it. Thanks.
I just realized something. We forgot to ask about the mini donuts. Forgot. I think the most valuable takeaway, though, from this whole thing is the fact that there is a measurable difference in showroom traffic after an auto show is in town. And
yeah,
I just wasn't thinking of the complexity between that whole conversation. We're like, well, the manufacturers typically want the dealers to stay away from the brand, but dealers need to be involved if you're going to say people this is why you should buy it at my Ford store over that Ford store, right? That's in their best interest. So there's a lot more complexity in this little ecosystem than I knew going into this conversation.
Well, it's such a tier one play to be at an auto show, but the auto show's in a backyard. It's in a space. It's not digital. It's not a Super Bowl ad or anything like that. It's very tier 3 in nature, right? Because it's that interpersonal connection that people are getting with a brand, and I think that dealers and OEMs would do good to figure out how to activate at that level. We actually we have a good friend, Errol Bomar, who a lot of you may know from NADA. He was at ASOTU with us this year, and he's like, oh no, people are asking deep, detailed questions that sometimes only if you've been educated on deep details of these vehicles, they would know. And I think that, these auto shows, people are really focused on what these cars actually can bring. And it's kind of like a non-intrusive environment for them to research and be educated.
There's another element here. And the best way I can explain it is the influence of feeling. So, I don't know if you've ever experienced this. You go to a concert, you're there to see the headliner. There's a couple of opening acts you've never heard of. You're not really interested in it. And then they take the stage and you're like, oh, wait, I kind of actually dig these people. This is kind of cool. And then you leave with their merch, and you leave with
then they're on your playlist. And
they're on your playlist.
And your Spotify or Apple
exactly.
Music.
And that kind of happens at auto shows. I saw it for the first time when I was in Toronto. The level of attention that these OEMs, they're hiring architects to design spaces that make you feel a certain way, that highlight the vehicle in a certain way. And what that does is it opens up the consumer's reception to learning about that vehicle, feeling the vehicle now in a light that they wouldn't feel it if they were just walking the lot. And I think that's so critical. I'm talking a lot about how technology is advancing and there's all this talk about what's going to be replaced. I love that we're kind of keying in on some of the things that can't be replaced, which is human connection, human feeling, and its influence on buying cycles and on where we live and how we live and all those sorts of things. And I kind of pick up on that as I review this this podcast episode.
Well, the point is, support your local auto show. Get out there, be creative with your activations, and we need more people eye to eye, face to face with the sales teams and the service teams and all the people, the wonderful people that are inside your stores. So on behalf of Kyle Mountsier, Michael Cirillo, and myself, get to an auto show, eat the mini donuts, and thanks for listening to Auto Collabs.
Welcome to Auto Collabs. Why are we recording?
Are we rolling yet?